So soon as they arrived at the princely mansion of Boteler, the Lady Emma craved permission to retire to her chamber, that she might compose her spirits after the terror she had undergone. Henry Streatclear, in a few words, proceeded to explain the adventure to the curious audience. I had no sooner seen my sister's palfrey, in spite of her endeavors to the contrary, entering with spirit into the chase set on foot by the worshipful Gregory than I rode after to give her assistance. So long was the chase that when the greyhounds pulled down the knobbler, we were out of hearing of your bugles, and having rewarded and coupled the dogs, I gave them to be led by the jester, and we wandered in quest of our company, whom, it would seem, the sport had led in a different direction. At length, passing through the thicket where you found us, I was surprised by a crossbow bolt whizzing past mine head. I drew my sword and rushed into the thicket, but was instantly assailed by 2 ruffians, while other 2 made towards my sister and Gregory. The poor knave fled, crying for help, pursued by my false kinsman, now your prisoner, and the designs of the other on my poor Emma, murderous no doubt, were prevented by the sudden apparition of a brave woodsman, who, after a short encounter, stretched the miscreant at his feet and came to my assistance. I was already slightly wounded, and nearly overlaid with odds. The combat lasted some time, for the caitiffs were both well armed, strong, and desperate. At length, however, we had each mastered our antagonist, when your retinue, my Lord Boteler, arrived to my relief. So ends in my story, but, on my knighthood, I would give an earl's ransom for an opportunity of thanking the gallant forester by whose aid I live to tell it. Fear not, said Lord Boteler, he shall be found if this or the 4 adjacent counties hold him. And now Lord Fitzosborne will be pleased to doff the armor he has so kindly assumed for our sakes, and we will all bound ourselves for the banquet. When the hour of dinner approached, the Lady Matilda and her cousin visited the chamber of the fair Darcy. They found her in a composed but melancholy posture. She turned the discourse upon the misfortunes of her life, and hinted that having recovered her brother, and seeing him look forward to the society of one who would amply repay to him the loss of hers, she had thoughts of dedicating her remaining life to heaven, by whose providential interference it had been so often preserved. Matilda colored deeply at something in this speech, and her cousin inveighed loudly against Emma's resolution. Ah, my dear Lady Eleanor, replied she, I have today witnessed what I cannot but judge a supernatural visitation, and to what end can it call me but to give myself to the altar? That peasant who guided me, to Baddow through the park of Danbury, the same who appeared before me at different times and in different forms during that eventful journey, that youth, whose features are imprinted on my memory, is the very individual forester who this day rescued us in the forest. I cannot be mistaken, and connecting these marvelous appearances with the spectre which I saw while at Gay Bowers, I cannot resist the conviction that heaven has permitted my guardian angel to assume mortal shape for my relief and protection. The fair cousins, after exchanging looks which implied a fear that her mind was wandering, answered her in soothing terms, and finally prevailed upon her to accompany them to the banqueting hall. Here the first person they encountered was the Baron Fitzosborne of Digswell, now divested of his armor, at the sight of whom the Lady Emma changed color, and exclaiming, It is the same, sunk senseless into the arms of Matilda. She is bewildered by the terrors of the day, said Eleanor, and we have done ill in obliging her to descend. And I, said Fitzosborne, have done madly in presenting before her one whose presence must recall moments the most alarming in her life. While the ladies supported Emma from the hall, Lord Boteler and Streatclear requested an explanation from Fitzosborne of the words he had used. Trust me, gentle lords, said the Baron of Digswell, ye shall have what ye demand, when I learn that Lady Emma Darcy has not suffered from my imprudence. At this moment Lady Matilda, returning, said that her fair friend, on her recovery, had calmly and deliberately insisted that she had seen Fitzosborne before, in the most dangerous crisis of her life. I dread, said she, her disordered mind connects all that her eye beholds with the terrible passages that she has witnessed. Nay, said Fitzosborne, if noble Streatclear can pardon the unauthorized interest which, with the purest and most honorable intentions, I have taken in his sister's fate, it is easy for me to explain this mysterious impression. He proceeded to say that, happening to be in the hostelry called the Griffin, near Baddow, while upon a journey in that country, he had met with the old nurse of the Lady Emma Darcy, who, being just expelled front gay bowers, was in the height of her grief and indignation, and made loud and public proclamation of Lady Emma's wrongs. From the description she gave of the beauty of her foster child, as well as from the spirit of chivalry, Fitzosborne became interested in her fate. This interest was deeply enhanced when, by a bribe to old Gaunt the Reeve, he procured a view of the Lady Emma as she walked near the castle of Gay Bowers. The aged churl refused to give him access to the castle, yet dropped some hints, as if he thought the lady in danger, and wished she were well out of it. His master, he said, had heard she had a brother in life, and since that deprived him of all chance of gaining her domains by purchase, he, in short, God wished they were safely separated. If any injury, quoth he, should happen to the damsel here, it were ill for us all. I tried, by an innocent stratagem, to frighten her from the castle by introducing a figure through a trapdoor and warning her, as if by a voice from the dead, to retreat from thence, but the giglet is wilful, and is running upon her fate. Finding Gaunt, although covetous and communicative, too faithful a servant to his wicked master to take any active steps against his commands, Fitzosborne applied himself to old Ursley, whom he found more tractable. Through her he learned the dreadful plot Gaston had laid to rid himself of his kinswoman, and resolved to effect her deliverance. But aware of the delicacy of Emma's situation, he charged Ursley to conceal from her the interest he took in her distress, resolving to watch over her in disguise until he saw her in a place of safety. Hence the appearance he made before her in various dresses during her journey, in the course of which he was never far distant, and he had always 4 stout yeomen within hearing of his bugle, had assistance been necessary. When she was placed in safety at the lodge, it was Fitzosborne's intention to have prevailed upon his sisters to visit, and take her under their protection, but he found them absent from Digswell, having gone to attend an aged relation who lay dangerously ill in a distant county. They did not return until the day before the May Games, and the other events followed too rapidly to permit Fitzosborne to lay any plan for introducing them to Lady Emma Darcy. On the day of the chase he resolved to preserve his romantic disguise and attend the Lady Emma as a forester, partly to have the pleasure of being near her, and partly to judge whether, according to an idle report in the country, she favoured his friend and comrade Fitzalan of Marden. This last motive, it may easily be believed, he did not declare to the company. After the skirmish with the ruffians, he waited till the Baron and the hunters arrived, and then, still doubting the further designs of Gaston, hastened to his castle to arm the band which had escorted them to Queenhoo Hall. Fitzosborne's story being finished, he received the thanks of all the company, particularly of St. Cleer, who felt deeply the respectful delicacy with which he had conducted himself towards his sister. The lady was carefully informed of her obligations to him, and it is left to the well-judging reader whether even the raillery of Lady Eleanor made her regret that heaven had only employed natural means for her security, and that the guardian angel was converted into a handsome, gallant, and enamoured knight. The joy of the company in the hall extended itself to the buttery, where Gregory the jester narrated such feats of arms done by himself in the fray of the morning as might have shamed Bevis and Guy of Warwick. He was, according to his narrative, singled out for destruction by the gigantic Baron himself, while he abandoned to meaner hands the destruction of St. Cleer and Fitzosborne. But, certes, said he, the foul Paynim met his match, for, ever as he foined me with his brand, I parried his blows with my bauble, and closing with him upon the third venet, threw him to the ground, and made him cry recreant to an unarmed man. Tush, man, said Droslot, thou forgettest thy best auxiliaries, the good greyhounds, Help and Holdfast. I warrant thee that when the humpbacked Baron caught thee by the cowl, which he hath almost torn off, thou hadst been in a fair plight, had they not remembered an old friend and come in to the rescue. Why, man, I found them fastened on him myself, and there was odd staving and stickling to make them wear haunch. Their mouths were full of the flex, for I pulled a piece of the garment from their jaws. I warrant thee that when they brought him to ground, thou fledst like a fright pricket. And as for Gregory's gigantic Paynim, said Fabian, why, he lies yonder in the guardroom, the very size, shape, and colour of a spider in a yew hedge.
"It is false," said Gregory. "Calbrand the Dane was a dwarf to him."
"It is as true," returned Fabian, "as that the tasker is to be married on Tuesday to pretty Marjorie. Gregory, thy sheet hath brought them between a pair of blankets." "I care no more for such a gilflirt," said the jester, "than I do for thy leasings. Marry, thou hopple my thumb, happy wouldst thou be could thy head reach the captive baron's girdle." "By the mass," said Peter Lonoret, "I will have one peep at this burly gallant," and leaving the buttery, he went to the guardroom where Gaston Streetclear was confined. A man-at-arms, who kept sentinel on the strong-studded door of the apartment, said he believed he slept, for that after raging, stamping, and uttering the most horrid imprecations, he had been of late perfectly still. The falconer gently drew back a sliding board, of a foot square, towards the top of the door, which covered a hole of the same size, strongly latticed, through which the warder, without opening the door, could look in upon his prisoner. From this aperture he beheld the wretched Gaston suspended by the neck, by his own girdle, to an iron ring in the side of his prison. He had clambered to it by means of the table on which his food had been placed, and in the agonies of shame and disappointed malice, had adopted this mode of ridding himself of a wretched life. He was found yet warm, but totally lifeless. A proper account of the manner of his death was drawn up and certified. He was buried that evening in the chapel of the castle, out of respect to his high birth, and the chaplain of Fitzalan of Marden, who said the service upon the occasion, preached, the next Sunday, an excellent sermon upon the text, Radix malorum est cupiditas, which we have here transcribed. Here the manuscript from which we have painfully transcribed, and frequently, as it were, translated this tale, for the reader's edification, is so indistinct and defaced that, excepting certain howbeits, nathlases, loyes, etc., we can pick out little that is intelligible, saving that avarice is defined a licorishness of heart after earthly things. A little farther there seems to have been a gay account of Marjorie's wedding with Ralph the Tasker, the running at the quintin, and other rural games practiced on the occasion. There are also fragments of a mock sermon preached by Gregory upon that occasion, as for example, "M.V. dear cursed caitiffs, there was once a king, and he wedded a young old queen, and she had a child, and this child was sent to Solomon the sage, praying he would give it the same blessing which he got from the witch of Endor when she bit him by the heel." Hereof speaks the worthy Dr. Radigundus Potator. Why should not mass be said for all the roasted shoe soles served up in the king's dish on Saturday? For true it is that St. Peter asked Father Adam, as they journeyed to Camelot, an high, great, and doubtful question, Adam, Adam, why eatest thou the apple without paring? Asterisk. This tirade of gibberish is literally taken or selected from a mock discourse pronounced by a professed jester, which occurs in an ancient manuscript in the Advocate's Library, the same from which the late ingenious Mr. Weber published the curious comic romance of The Limiting of the Hare. It was introduced in compliance with Mr. Strutt's plan of rendering his tale an illustration of ancient manners. A similar burlesque sermon is pronounced by the fool in Sir David Lindesay's satire of the Three Estates. The nonsense and vulgar burlesque of that composition illustrate the ground of Sir Andrew Aguecheek's eulogy on the exploits of the jester in Twelfth Night, who, reserving his sharper jests for Sir Toby, had doubtless enough of the jargon of his calling to captivate the imbecility of his brother knight, who was made to exclaim, "In sooth, thou wast in very gracious fooling last night when thou spokest of Pygregremetus, and of the vapours passing the equinoctials of Quinbus. Tea was very good. I faith." It is entertaining to find commentators seeking to discover some meaning in the professional jargon of such a passage as this. With much goodly gibberish to the same effect, which display of Gregory's ready wit not only threw the whole company into convulsions of laughter, but made such an impression on Rose, the potter's daughter, that it was thought it would be the jester's own fault if Jack was long without his Jill. Much pithy matter concerning the bringing the bride to bed, the loosing the bridegroom's points, the scramble which ensued for them, and the casting of the stocking, is also omitted, from its obscurity. The following song, which has been since borrowed by the worshipful author of the famous History of Friar Bacon, has been with difficulty deciphered. It seems to have been sung on occasion of carrying home the bride.
Bridal Song. To the tune of I Have Been a Fiddler, etc. And did you not hear of a mirth befell the morrow after a wedding day, and carrying a bride at home to dwell? And away to Tuin, away, away. The quinton was set, and the garlands were made. 'Tis pity old customs should ever decay, and woe be to him that was horsed on a jade, for he carried no credit away, away. We met a consort of fiddledies, we set them a cock-horse, and made them play the winning of Bullen and Upsifiers, and away to Tuin, away, away. There was ne'er a lad in all the parish that would go to the plough that day, but on his forehorse his wench he carries, and away to Tuin, away, away. The butler was quick, and the ale he did tap, the maidens did make the chamber full gay, the servants did give me a fuddling cup, and I did carry tea away, away. The smith of the town his liquor so took that he was persuaded that the ground looked blue, and I dare boldly be sworn on a book such smiths as he there's but a few. A posset was made, and the women did sip, and simpering said they could eat no more. Full many a maiden was laid on the lip. I'll say no more, but give o'er, give o'er. But what our fair readers will chiefly regret is the loss of 3 declarations of love, the first by St. Chlore to Matilda, which, with the lady's answer, occupies 15 closely written pages of manuscript. That of Fitzosborne to Emma is not much shorter, but the amours of Fitzalan and Eleanor, being of a less romantic cast, are closed in 3 pages only. The 3 noble couples were married in Queenhoo Hall upon the same day, being the 20th Sunday after Easter. There is a prolix account of the marriage feast, of which we can pick out the names of a few dishes, such as peterel, crane, sturgeon, swan, etc., with a profusion of wildfowl and venison. We also see that a suitable song was produced by Pareto on the occasion, and that the bishop, who blessed the bridal beds which received the happy couples, was no niggard of his holy water, bestowing half a gallon upon each of the couches. We regret we cannot give these curiosities to the reader in detail, but we hope to expose the manuscript to abler antiquaries, so soon as it shall be framed and glazed by the ingenious artist who rendered that service to Mr. Ireland's Shakespeare manuscripts. And so, being unable to lay aside the style to which our pen is habituated, gentle reader, we bid thee heartily farewell.